Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, we're saying hooray for Hollywood, how the US film industry became a tool of propaganda in wartime and in the process became a dominant and creative financial force worldwide. The First World War saw the movie makers caught in the horns of a real dilemma. They wanted to keep their artistic independence. The US government, though, wanted them to tell stories that supported their political position. 100 years ago, the first American troops came to France. US involvement in the Great War provided a backdrop for heroic tales filmed and broadcast worldwide with the big stars of the day, such as Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. But did all this really amount to a cynical manipulation of the masses? 100,000 Americans were among the 10 million killed in the First World War. Hollywood didn't reflect the horror that they suffered, only the heroic struggle and the valiant success the system craved. Our reports by Florence Gaillard with the voice of Brian Quinn.
It all began in this barn. In 1913, Cecil B. DeMille directed the first feature-length movie filmed entirely in Hollywood. It would be the first of many. With Europe soon to be engulfed by the Great War, American cinema was about to explode. (1914). The war is demanding every means of production in Europe. Men, women, factories, transports. But also medias, press, radio, photography, and cinema. At the same time in the United States, a movement is growing. Filmmakers, until then mostly located on the East Coast, are moving to California for its near-permanent sunshine.
With the outbreak of World War I in Europe, European filmmaking, which up to that point had provided Americans with roughly half their movies, shuts down. And so suddenly American filmmakers, who are entrepreneurs first and foremost, they suddenly see this enormous opportunity. Europe has stopped producing films by and large, and now we can not only capture the entire American market, but we can begin to send even more films to Europe. The only thing that's stopping us is production. We need to double our production. And the way to do it is to go out where we can shoot almost twice as many days a year. That's why they come to California.
By 1914, Los Angeles is still a small city, but it's booming. A key West Coast port, the former Spanish mission now has oil deposits side by side with orange groves. It's also attracting the aeronautics industry, which settles into the vast open spaces surrounding the city.
Los Angeles in 1900 has attracted already a number of prominent business people, industrialists, railroaders, ranching magnates, and a constellation of those individuals imagine for Los Angeles a future of glorious metropolitan growth. So they see themselves at the cutting edge of the Westerning experience in American history. They've reached the edge of the Pacific, and they plan to build a magnificent metropolis here. Early filmmakers who come here, they probably realize fairly quickly, we can make this an entire scene. We can do anything we want with this. We can make this look like the American South. We can make this look like biblical times. We can make this look like the rural American past. They've got a landscape they can play with.
The star of the era is Mary Pickford. Originally from Canada, she had been on stage since the age of 5. To help support her family, she agrees to go in front of the camera, first for a summer, then another. In 1914, she becomes the first American actress to have her name on a movie poster.
Mary Pickford's character stood up to the bully. She fought for the underclass. Her characters all had a moral compass. They gave, I think, a generation of females in the audience an option to see people who, yes, you can stand up for what you believe in, you can fight, you can win, and you can most often get the boy in the end too. But it's okay to speak up.
Around the same time, a young Englishman is also making his debut in Los Angeles. Charlie Chaplin joins the team of Max Sennett, a producer of short comedy films, each one lasting 10 to 20 minutes, filmed in quick succession. In 1914, Chaplin creates the character of the Tramp, a clownish outsider. It's an immediate success, first in the United States, then around the world. The Tramp may be upending the established order, but his films stay out of politics. As the conflict heats up in Europe, American cinema isn't taking sides. No one wants to alienate their public, largely made up of immigrants, often coming from countries at war with one another. 1915, Hollywood's first historical epic. David W. Griffith directs Birth of a Nation, a film of over 3 hours, telling the story of the Civil War from the South's point of view, with blacks unworthy of citizenship, abusive federal troops, and a heroic Ku Klux Klan, defender of threatened whites.
Griffith was explaining that during and after the war, white people suffered in the South. So thus they had to have someone to protect them. That is why the Birth of a Nation was so controversial to this day. The political issues is one thing. The other part of it is the technological mastery of this wonderful director, D.W. Griffith. The close-ups, the special effects, the movement of large groups of people, the Battle of Gettysburg, which was filmed in the San Fernando Valley. All of these things made this an epic film that people had to see.
The film is shown at the White House. President Wilson, himself from the South, is reported to have said, "It was like writing history with lightning." In 1916, Wilson is in the midst of a re-election campaign. His promise, to stay out of the war and focus on the economy. The same year, Thomas Ince directs a big-budget film denouncing the ravages of the war. Its title, Civilization.
Civilization was seen at the time as a film calling for peace. And Woodrow Wilson used it in his 1916 campaign, along with his promise to keep Americans out of the war, that World War I was a war for Europe to fight, not for America. And Wilson told the voters, if you vote for me, you can be assured we are not going to enter World War I.
But the war is starting to inspire filmmakers. In his first epic, Cecil B. DeMille shows a British officer sent alone to storm enemy trenches. Joan of Arc appears to him in a dream to give him the courage to carry out his suicide mission. Only a few months earlier, a tragedy has turned American opinion on the war upside down. The Lusitania, transporting civilians and war materiel to Great Britain, was torpedoed by a German submarine. 1,200 victims went into the sea, including 128 Americans.
Of course, the United States feels like it's far from Europe until, mostly, German submarine attacks bring the war home through the deaths of American citizens. So as those things happen, Los Angeles begins to pay more and more attention. But there are plenty of people in Los Angeles in 1914, 15, 16 saying we have to get involved.
Then there's the Zimmermann telegram. In January of 1917, a coded message destined for the Mexican government is intercepted by British intelligence. Its author, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the German Empire, Arthur Zimmermann.
It says, in case the United States enters the war on the side of Great Britain and the Allies, that there will be an alliance between Germany and Mexico, and it creates a furor in the United States.
So the Zimmermann telegram reminds that the American Southwest had once been Mexican territory and could return to Mexican ownership and Mexican provincial government. That is something that wakes Southern California up to the seriousness of the war.
In the same period, Cecil B. DeMille directs The Little American with Mary Pickford in the title role. She plays Angela, who is trying to reach her elderly aunt in Europe. she embarks on a ship, which, like the Lusitania, is torpedoed along its journey. Rescued from the jaws of death, Angela arrives in occupied France. There, she witnesses atrocities committed by the Germans and picks a side, the Allies. On April 6, 1917, the American Congress votes for war, with 373 for and only 50 against. President Wilson must quickly adapt his stance.
He's now a man who has just a year ago promised to keep us out of war, is now plunging into war. So he's got to shift the entire opinion of a nation. So a week after he declares war, he creates the Committee on Public Information. And he appoints a former newspaperman, George Creel. He gives him one-line assignment: sell the war to the American people.
Already aware of its growing influence, George Creel calls on Hollywood. He asks the studios to produce films glorifying America and its government. It's a request that is, at first, rejected. Producers want to stay independent. So George Creel turns from the carrot to the stick. If Hollywood refuses, the government will limit the export of its films, recruit its employees into the army, and close its theaters in the evenings. A few days later, he gets a letter from the studios. They've changed their tune.
Well, we've decided that we want to cooperate with the government, and we will now be producing only happy movies for the American population. And so Creel wins. He's able to make sure that there will be no dissent in Hollywood. There will be no anti-war movies that will weaken the morale of the American people.
The stars of the cinema take pains to show that they are taking part in the war effort. 2 weeks after the vote in Congress, a National Guard unit called the Home Guard is organized in Los Angeles. Its captain, Cecil B. DeMille. Its flag bearer, Mary Pickford. On Sundays, the Guard unit parades on Hollywood Boulevard and in downtown Los Angeles.
The Home Guard basically is Hollywood showing its patriotism. These were symbolic, of course, but they actually had real units trained by the real army at the Lasky Ranch, by the way, how to shoot, how to maneuver, how to do all of this, so they could be kind of like leaders. You know, leaders not only making films about anti-war, about this, or during the war as propaganda for the war, but to be a part of the war.
Another contribution by big screen actors, the campaign for war bond subscriptions. Washington puts together several tours with Douglas Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and the boxer Jack Dempsey. It's a success. Millions of dollars are collected.
And Hollywood stars, for the first time, use their popularity to influence the public. Admiring fans buy millions of dollars of Liberty bonds from their movie favorites.
Millions of people turned out for them. They had no idea. In the teens, without television and radio and all of this, this really made them the international superstars. I guess you could say that the war did do this.
The collaboration between Washington and Hollywood proves lucrative. Beyond their films, the studios receive contracts from the government for newsreels from the front, war reports, and patriotic short films. Soon, the cinema has gone beyond the government's expectations, drifting into propaganda, clearly anti-German.
War, what wonderful subject for a movie. It's all kinds of possibilities for storytelling. And then when you throw in, come and hiss the Kaiser, and you have, the good guy and the bad guy is what movies are all about.
The films have a profound influence on young soldiers, who for the most part are discovering the cinema at the same time as they're being pulled into the war. Mary Pickford becomes the honorary patron for a number of armed forces regiments, from the Marines to the Air Force. In the beginning of 1918, reality and fiction merge when the screenwriter Frances Marion writes Joanna Enlists for her. In the film, her character urges the viewer to enlist and to finish the fight. Director David W. Griffith is called on by the British government to make a documentary in support of the Allies. Invited to film at the front lines of the Battle of the Somme, he includes his war footage in a drama that denounces German brutality.
Griffith actually goes to France and shoots scenes in the trenches. Most of the film was made in Hollywood, of course, at the Lasky Ranch. But the point of all of this is to show that women, families, children are suffering. When you focus in on the women of the war films, it becomes something of humanity that people relate to.
The First World War claimed 10 million lives in Europe, 100,000 of them American. But it also turned the U.S. into the world's premier economic power.
It changed everything in this country. I don't think they ever would have projected this in 1914, but the war is incredibly beneficial to Hollywood because it has wiped out all competition from people who, in fact, were superior filmmakers, now have to play catch up. And they never really do catch up because, you know, when the war's over, 90% of the world's films are coming from America.
In 1919, Douglas Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith founded United Artists to protect their works. The studios now controlled the production, distribution, and exploitation of films. With the war, cinema became an industry. Los Angeles, its capital, its stars, important allies to Washington. From then on, Hollywood would be an economic and political influence, not just for the American public, but for the entire world.
Thank you for watching this edition of Reporters. See it again on the website francevingt.com. This is Reporters on France 24. Stay with us.